Good evening, and welcome to the council meeting of September 26, 2022. The meeting is being live streamed on Facebook Live, and the most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website. The Town of Kentville was spared the worst of Fiona. However, many of our municipal neighbors, families, and friends were not. I simply acknowledge our thoughts for strength and through the restoration. There was a news release by the province announcing additional financial support for Nova Scotians affected by Hurricane Fiona, and that's news release 2022-09-26. We will have it available to you on our website tomorrow morning for details of the grants and how to apply for those. I'd also like to acknowledge that this is Nova Scotia Volunteer Week, and a big thank you goes out to all of our volunteers. We know that most organizations could not function without the volunteers, and we thank you so much for your time and your effort on behalf of your community. In recognition of National Day of Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th, this evening presents an opportunity for a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that our work and the town of Kentville are located within the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are responsible and accountable to uphold the recommendations and processes of truth and reconciliation. We are all treaty people. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting package? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? I will remind members of council that we are in decision-making mode and we should be mindful of our decision-making wheel. We have committed to making balanced and respectful decisions and adhering to our code of conduct. This council, through policy and by motion, has adopted Robert's Rules as our rules of order, our parliamentary procedure. I will remind members of council to speak into your microphone. When you adjust it down and upwards towards your face to ensure that our viewing public has a good clear bead on your voice. We will be voting by electronic means for all votes except administrative. And are there any conflict of interest issues we should be aware of before this meeting commences? I note that all members of council are present and we have quorum. We have been provided with a proposed agenda. Are there any further additions to the agenda? CAO, I'll defer to you at this point.
Thank you very much. So the first piece I would recommend under 5A, number 6, which was first reading of property assessed community energy bylaw. There's some definitional pieces in there that we're going to go back and take a look at, so I'm going to pull that from the agenda this evening.
Thank you.
And then under in camera, I'll just note on the agenda, it has 9B and C, so that should be 9A and 9B. But I'd also like to I have another legal item, which would be an update in camera with regards to Mike's clothing.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. I just want to make sure that when we go on camera, we're going to have a recording secretary. On the July 25th meeting, we didn't have one for some reason and caused a little bit of confusion. So just if there's assurance that we're going to have someone that needs to be added to the agenda or not, or just to make note of it.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll defer to the CAO.
The recording secretary is here this evening, so I would expect so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Well, thank you. I would like us to have a very short discussion, because I have some questions, on storm cleanup in the town.
CAO, I note that the Director of Public Works is here, and you are here. Do we have the ability to provide a short update on that before the meeting commences with our agenda?
I would say so, if Director Bell is, just for clarity, is it a discussion about concerns or is it an update that you'd be looking for?
Well, I can tell you exactly. There's a number of people in town, single women and seniors, who are having some difficulty with where they're going to dispose of the larger branches and so on, and they're wondering if the town was going to do a cleanup much like Berwick does. After the storm, people can take it out to the curb and somebody, town comes around and picks it up. So I've been asked to ask that question here tonight.
If I may, the news release speaks to that, and there is funding available for every home that needs to remove debris.
Okay, well, let's hope that people take, and let's hope they all qualify for that funding.
All right, if there's nothing further, if we could have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Thank you. And the seconder, Councillor Huntley, thank you. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. Moving right along, we have been provided with minutes to the July 25th, 2022 council meeting distributed for review. If there are no changes, the minutes are approved as distributed. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate those. Are there any changes to those minutes? No changes? All right, moving right along. And business arising. We have first on our agenda is the noise bylaw. CAO Troke, did you wish to speak to council on this matter?
Thank you, Mayor Snow. So just as per direction was given, the adjustments to the bylaw limits as well as the information with regards to taking readings, and there's also additionally the ability, should a contractor require an exemption, the information is all in there, so it would be second reading of that bylaw this evening.
All right, thank you very much, CAO. So our motion would be that council gives second reading to the noise bylaw. If someone could move that, please. Councillor York, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Zabian, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council gives second reading to the noise bylaw. Is there any discussion on this matter? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I would like to know what 2.1.6 point of reception, 2.1.6.2, located at least 1.2 meters above the surface of the ground or floor. Why do we have to have a measurement? I can't see a bylaw officer, police officer, or anybody going to do a decibel reading and pulling out their tape measure and putting it under their foot and pulling it up to 1.2 meters and then taking the reading. I don't think that that's something that we really need to have in our bylaw. And so I'm wondering why we feel, or somebody feels it's necessary to have that.
CAO?
Thank you, Councillor. So typically when holding a device, and whatever that may be, basically what you're trying to describe as to where you'll be holding it. So let's just say, for sake of argument, in front of your chest or off to the side or whatever it may be. And so you try as much as possible to create consistency. So for example, that if you were trying to measure a noise, you would be holding the device in front of you as opposed to maybe holding it off to the side. And when we had discussions on this many months ago, there was even a conversation around how far you should be from buildings and so on to make sure. So it's just about consistency, and it's an attempt to try and describe that consistency.
That still doesn't really make much sense, because I really don't think we do expect our officers of enforcement to pull out a tape measure and pull it up to 1.2 meters. And I, really can't see them taking it over here or taking it over there, down on the floor or up in the ceiling. I think that we can assume that they're going to take it from in front of themselves at the location. So I just think, if somebody decided to take us to court, that's a question that, you could ask. 1.2 meters, and no officer is going to say, yeah, I pulled out my tape measure and I measured up 1.2 meters from the ground. So I just think that it's something that's not necessary, and it's there just to make things a little bit more complicated. And, I'd like to see it removed and just go with people taking a reading where it's appropriate to take a reading. We don't need to make it more difficult for our police department or whoever is going to do the enforcement to take that reading.
If I might, Your Worship, it's
Yes,
actually
please, before you start, could you just adjust the microphone to ensure that it is,
that's as close as it comes.
okay, perfect.
It's actually the exact opposite. It adds clarity, and it's a minimum of 1.2 meters. You don't want to be too close to a floor, for example, for the same reasons you don't want to be too close to a wall. There are all kinds of other things. Whether you're measuring noise or you're measuring the speed of a car, that a police officer has to turn their mind to when they're using the instrument. They have to use it appropriately. But here, the bylaw itself sets out the minimum distance from the floor, and 1.2 meters, for those who are investigating it, this is, in my opinion, a very minor component of what they have to know in order to investigate and enforce the bylaw.
Thank you, Solicitor. Councillor Deputy Mayor Savage.
Thank you, Worship. The solicitor responded.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maxwell, I'll remind you that you've spoken twice on this matter. Do you have something new to bring forward?
I just want to ask the solicitor a question. So my question to the solicitor was, if it's just for clarity, and you're saying it's just for clarity, does it have to be there? That's my question.
And the answer is, it actually assists in the prosecution when something like that is clarified. So the answer is no, it doesn't have to be there, but anything that assists with prosecution, we want there, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to give second reading to the noise bylaw. We may be voting with our hands.
Would you mind? Snuck up on me.
Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you very much. And our next item on our agenda is the Police Commission bylaw. CAO Trope, can you update us on this matter, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Snow. A couple things before moving on. I just want to point to there, under section 11, there's a typo. It says personal, and that should be personnel. So the third line down on number 11. So just for clarity. The other piece I would just like to point to is that section 20 and 21, working collectively, we should add to upon approval by council in section 20 and the approval of the Minister of Justice. Essentially, otherwise there would be a gap between the approval process and the repealing of the bylaw. So I would just point those out as items. The only other thing I would mention to council, and it's an item, I guess really in some ways for consideration, is an in-camera meeting under this bylaw does require unanimous approval in order to go into an in-camera meeting. So I just did want to point that out, that that is an item that is there, that certainly many organizations can work with that, but it is an item that would mean that if there was a personnel issue, you would be required to have unanimous consideration from the board to go into an in-camera item. So I just point that out. Otherwise, the other items here, tonight we would be talking about second reading of the bylaw.
Thank you very much, CAO. So a motion that council gives second reading to the Board of Police Commissioners bylaw. If someone could move that, please. Councillor Huntley, thank you. And a seconder? Thank you, and Councillor Zabian? It has been moved and seconded that council give second reading to the Board of Police Commissioner bylaw. Is there any discussion on this matter? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I've done a lot of work on Police Commission in the last few days, and I've been in to speak to the chief at a 2-hour meeting with him today. And what I've discovered after thoroughly reading the Police Act and chatting is that we have some very specific things that we need to do as a police commission. And many of those things are not done and have not been done for a long, long time. When I joined Police Commission, I was given nothing. No training manual, no documents, no organizational documents, no strategic plan, no goals, nothing. And I walked in blind. And every citizen appointment over the years has done exactly the same thing, walked in blind. And there are very specific things that we need to do. Two of the biggest ones are to ensure civilian governance in relation to the enforcement of law, maintenance of law and order, and the prevention of crime in the town. And the other thing that we're supposed to do is provide administrative direction to the chief, organization and policy required to maintain an adequate and effective police force. We're supposed to have policies and so on, and we don't. There's nothing. And I've been remiss in that I have not gone and done a thorough deep dive into the Police Act. I have a tendency to believe that the chair guides the ship. And this ship has not been guided in as long as I have been on this commission, and I suspect it hasn't been guided before that. And so the people that have been sitting on our commission for the last few years have become very frustrated, as have I, because they don't see any purpose in the police commission. And I think that, and what I've read, is that we have been, as a council, and not just this council, but previous councils, have been remiss and not done due diligence to make sure that our police commission members have been given all the tools that they need to have to run an effective police commission. I believe that our chairs have not done in the past their due diligence to make sure that the tools are given to the members and the members are following protocols and what needs to be done on a police commission. And I think that because the chief reports to the commission and takes direction from the commission, we cannot do that job when we don't know what our mandate is and what we're supposed to be doing. Matter of fact, some of the duties that the commission is supposed to be doing have been taken away from the commission and are being done by the town without the knowledge of the commission. And that has to change if in Kentville we're going to have an effective police commission. Having members jumping in and out every couple of years with absolutely no training or no documents or no strategic direction is not doing our police service any good. It's weakening us. And so I believe that we have shortchanged all the people who have served on the police commission for at least 6 years and probably beyond that, because they are there accomplishing nothing. They don't know what their mandate is, and they want to help. These are citizens that want to do the job for the town of Kentville, and we have prevented them from doing that. And so because of that, And one of the first changes that we want to make, and we are making changes right now, is that length of 3-year term, because then it gives us people who know what they're doing time to learn, put policy documents together, and so on. And when council turns down that request coming from commission, it diminishes the value of the commission. And so I think, really, finally, what I'd like to say is that because we haven't, as a council in the past, done our due diligence to ensure our police commission is working properly, and because the chairs haven't done that, I would like to plead to my fellow councillors around this table that we defeat the bylaw and we work with the present members of the commission who are trying to make change and right this ship. And we ask the CAO to make that length of term in the bylaw 3 years for citizens. And we give this commission a chance to right a ship that has been leaning in this town for a very, very, very long time. And I want to apologize for not doing my due diligence in reading that police act and coming forward a lot sooner than right now to try and right this ship. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor York.
Thank you. I also serve on the police commission, and I think one of the comments that we heard out of our conversations as well has been, or at the core of the issue has also been continuity. So when we talk, or when Councillor Maxwell referenced citizen members and council members coming and going based on the terms, it was also discussed there might be a staggered release so that there would be continuation from 1 year to the next, because regardless of the time frame, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 1 year, if everybody leaves at the same time, that could present just the same problems that Councillor Maxwell alluded to. So I'm not sure where that might be reflected or if that could be reflected. I know it's not in the Police Act and it's not in this bylaw, so I don't know if that is something that we can do. But it was, I think at the core of the issue is continuity between 1 year to the next. If I, or Councillor Maxwell can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe continuity rather was a critical issue. Yeah.
Through the chair, please.
Through the chair.
Oh, sorry. Through the chair.
Thank you.
And through the chair back, please. Yes, that's a big part, but it's not the only part. The fact that we've been operating blind for years is a bigger part.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. I think I've made it clear before in council, I've not served on the police commission before. I never have, and so I know a little bit about it in terms of what the bylaw says and what the revised bylaw says. But I took some time and spent some time with a couple of the members that serve on the police commission, and it certainly gave me an opportunity to get an idea of what the police commission does. And my understanding is that it provides strategic direction, on behalf of the citizens, and it provides that direction to the police force, or to the chief, sorry. And then the Police Act, though, trumps what our bylaw says, or can supersede it, I guess. I'm hearing that here tonight through at least one of the members on the commission that that the commission hasn't, under the leadership that it's had, that it hasn't been doing what it's supposed to do. So I need to get my head around what is it supposed to do, what hasn't it been doing, and some clarity around that. That's what I need in order to move forward and make decisions around the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. By reading this bylaw here, I'm understanding that the new changes would be to appoint new citizen appointments every year in November. So citizens are going to serve on there for 12 months, and then we're going to be back again recruiting people again. I'm just, there's good citizens on there now, and when I look at this, I find a flaw in the whole thing because we have so many committees where people have served on them for 4 or 5 years and there's never been a problem. And it just seems like now this is a way to dismantle what's there. I don't have a problem with that. I can't vote. I can't vote for this evening. I kind of echo what the others have said too, that do we not know what they're supposed to do? I haven't had the privilege of serving on the police commission, and I hope I get that opportunity someday. But if there's something we're missing here, I don't think, bringing a new bylaw out and putting a whole new group on there is gonna be effective at all. So I can't support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zabian. So I will just clarify, this commission, like all of our committees, is typically a 2-year for our citizen appointees and a re-up of another 2 years. And to serve further, they must step back for 2 years before they can be reappointed. Our current members have served for 6 years without being redone on an annual basis, much like we did from the audit committee. So you will recall that the audit committee on an annual basis puts forward a recommendation to council, because at the end of the day, it is council who appoints members to committees and who determine the length. It is not the CAO. I'm going to state that there are three immediate tasks that a police commission should do. One is a how-to manual for commissioners. The second is a on-duty police policy, on-duty police employment policy, and the other is an off-duty police policy. And those 3 items are clearly stated in the Police Act. And the Police Act, for those who wish to Google it, it comes up quickly if you do Police Act of Nova Scotia, and you can see those details there very clearly. Whether we have a 3-year or a 2-year Board of Police Commissioners, it really doesn't change the job that is being done, and so I will clearly state that. Otherwise, the bylaw is just basically emphasizing the things that are already in the Police Act and the police regulations that our commission needs to take as their authority. Councillor Maxwell, I will advise you, you've spoken once on this matter. This is your second time speaking on this matter.
Thank you. I disagree that the police commission is the same or should be treated exactly the same as any other Kentville committee. The police commission is supposed to have its own policies and its own administration documents, and the police commission is governed by a separate act that our other committees are not subject to, and the police commission has its own separate bylaw that no other committees of council have. And so to pigeonhole it under the same umbrella as all the other committees of council, I think is remiss. We should not be doing that. And that's a problem with this police commission. It does make a difference if we remove those members. We haven't given those members any opportunity whatsoever to make any changes in the way that the police commission is running. And I'm telling you right now, we have no strategic plan. We have no documents. We have no procedures. Every time we go to a police commission meeting, it's like, okay, what happened last month? Oh, there was speeding on this street and speeding on that. That's what we do. And that's on us as a council. We've been putting those people through this for, as you say, 6 years and never given 1 ounce of direction.
Councillor, I'm going to caution you right now. You have, on one hand, clearly stated that the police commission is standalone and that it's not like any other any other committee of council. And now you are changing the focus and you are putting it on council, that it's our fault that we have had an ineffective commission. You can't have it both ways.
Yes, you can, because the town of Kentville is responsible for giving the tools to the police department to run effectively. And part of those tools is an effectively run commission as well as infrastructure, which would be the buildings, the body armor, as well as the budget. That's what the town of Kentville is responsible for providing. It's right in the act. And as I said, I've done a deep dive on the act. That's in the act. And I think that what I would like to see this council do is give this group who's been forced to underperform because of lack of due diligence over the years, give this group a chance to right this ship that has been on a mean lean for all these years, and don't hinder it any further.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
My years on the police commission, I was also the NSAPG member. We lobbied the province, and I'm sure they still do, for training. We looked for training manuals. We were told we were going to get them. We had special meetings with special DOJ members. DOJ lawyers would come and interpret the police act as well as the police regulations. That has to come through DOJ. You can't have the Kentville Board of Police coming up with their own training manual and then the other boards and the other commissions throughout the province coming up with different. The Police Act says exactly what the police commission is supposed to be involved in. I would ask in a future meeting through the chair, I would ask Councillor Maxwell, she's referenced a whole bunch of things from the Police Act and the police regulations, for her to note these. What's been done, what's not been done, what they're responsible for, what they're not responsible for. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, this is your second time.
Thank you. There's obviously some ambiguity here around the commission and the act and what the purpose is, and I'm not sure what the best thing is to do, other than maybe table second reading at this point and have some more information on it. I feel like I need more information to move forward. Perhaps I'm the only one, and if I am, then I will just vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. No, I have to concur with what Deputy Mayor just said. I would like more information too, and I would second there's an option to table it. Thank you.
All right, so we will table this to next council meeting. Is that by consensus? So that would be October 31st council meeting? November 1st? So it'll be a Tuesday, so you get an extra day. So we are tabling this to November 1st, and the motion from Deputy Mayor and Councillor Zabian, you're for the second?
Yep.
All those in favor of tabling this matter until November the 1st? Those opposed, motion is carried. That was unanimous. Deputy Mayor, did you have something?
I think between now and then, though, hopefully there's some information, or hopefully, I'm not sure that just, and I apologize because I did make the motion to table it, but I think in the spirit of tabling it, something has to transpire between now and then so that we can make an informed and better decision. And I don't know what that looks like or sounds like, but perhaps the CAO has an idea as to what that could look like.
A solicitor?
Or the solicitor.
Councillor York, did you have something?
I'll wait to hear what the solicitor said.
I was just trying to be helpful. The part of the Police Act that applies to the board or commission is 5 pages long. It's not difficult to read. I'd suggest every one of you refer to that, and that will explain to you what the commission does. And I think you've heard from members of the commission here tonight as to some of the procedural issues they're looking to address in the bylaw, and some of those are pretty straightforward if indeed you're inclined to deal with this group differently than you deal with other groups. Staggered terms, length of terms, those sorts of things are relatively easily addressed. And so those are the policy issues that you can grapple with after you look at those 5 pages.
Thank you, Solicitor. I will also remind you to have a look at the police regulations. There is a portion in there with regards to police commissions, and it speaks directly to the tasks of the commission chair and the requirement for police checks for all members of the commission and the oath that they must sign as members of the commission. Councillor York, did you wish to proceed?
Yes, I was just wondering if perhaps we could arrange a Zoom session or similar with the Department of Justice, the DOJ, to inform everybody on council at the same time about what, and perhaps in conjunction with the police commission as well, so we can all be on the same page together moving forward.
CAO?
So 2 pieces, if I may. First of all, and I want to thank the solicitor. The section in the act is fairly concise, so certainly the information is there. And then to the mayor's point, in the regulation, there's some specifics in that. Also, probably would be worthwhile for folks to also take a look at G70 in connection with that. So happy to try and arrange a session with DOJ as well. I'm sure that if we're talking about a Zoom session or whatever, we'd be able to get somebody to do that.
All right, our next matter is with regards to FCM committee memo, and we at the June council meeting, council supported Councillor Huntley's nomination to sit on a working committee, and Councillor Huntley was successful in that nomination. However, the FCM requires a specific resolution from council as provided. The one that was provided was not did not have all the words as they expected on it. CAO, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, and so I think in the note that was prepared, there's a very specific piece outlined here and in gray, and that is just the minute that FCM is looking for from Kentville Council.
All right, thank you. So our motion would be that Town of Kentville Council support Councillor Paula Huntley's application to sit on FCM standing committees and attend committee meetings and forums. And if selected, that the Town of Kentville is prepared to incur the cost of attending meetings of the FCM's Board of Directors. If someone could move that, please. Thank you. Councillor York? Second?
Yeah, I'll second you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Yes.
No, I was saying that out loud for the recording secretary. If Councillor Huntley lives through this motion, it has been moved and seconded that the Town of Kentville Council support Councillor Paula Huntley's application to sit on the FCM standing committees and attend committee meetings and forums. And if selected, that the Town of Kentville is prepared to incur the cost of attending meetings of the FCM's Board of Directors. Is there any discussion on this matter? Councillor York.
Thank you. I'm wondering how many, because this is obviously in addition to the budget that we would have approved for meetings and those sorts of things. I'm wondering how many of the meetings there are annually, and then of those meetings, how many are available to attend virtually, so that the impact financially would be minimal. Thank you.
Through the...
Through the chair.
Councillor Huntley, through the chair, in response to that, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. There are 4 sessions that are booked between this year and next year, which ends May 2023. And 2 of those are hybrid. And if I may, my opinion is, if that does not, the cost of that does not fall under my training allowance, then I would only attend hybrid. I'm not spending extra money. That's not what it's about. It's the learning and being at the table is the most important. And they seem really flexible. So I'm taking the high road and going on Zoom whenever I can. Yeah.
Does that respond to your question? Councillor Zabian?
Thank you, Mayor Snow. I'm not sure I understand the answer to that question. Are we looking for funding guarantee or not? That's, I don't know if I just heard through the chair, yeah.
We need to have this very specific motion, and that if she does attend, that it will be paid for by the town of Kentville, that we would not be looking for money from the FCM to attend. So as you've heard from Councillor Huntley, if she had funds available in her allotment, she would use those funds. But if she did not have funds available, she would Zoom in on all meetings. Does that clarify?
Sort of. You know what? No disrespect to anybody. I mean, we're allocated $3,000 a year as counselors to use on training or whatever have you. And I think that's more than enough from the pocket of the taxpayer. And again, no disrespect to anybody, but I think when I look at Kentville and I look at the streets and I look at some of the problems we have, and I think, through the chair, I think Councillor Huntley mentioned that there was 4 trips in the next, potentially, if someone wanted to take those 4 trips, each one could potentially cost $3,000 or $4,000 with airfare and hotel and food and all the extras that come with it. And I mean, that's a lot of money over a time period. So again, no disrespect, I have a problem with this. I think we've got business to do in town here. We're a little town. We should be spending our money within the town, and I don't think that we need to send anybody on these trips. I have a problem with that, so thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. So I was a little confused, and I actually went back to the June 27th council meeting and looked at the motion that was made. And my understanding, and I know there was dialogue around it, but my understanding was that that motion was to give Councillor Huntley approval to apply for the committee. But then when I went back, and this is on me because I should have picked it up in the minutes when we did it in September. It said in the June 27th council minutes that we approved her to go on the committee. But it was, we approved her to apply, because at that juncture, she didn't know if she would be accepted to FCM. So I just needed clarification around that. So that's why when I saw to formally adopt this appointment, and then the motion as it's outlined there, that was a bit confusing to me because I had a different understanding of June. So I guess if there's 4 sessions and she and Councillor Huntley attends 2 and not 4, and obviously, is there another pocket where those funds come from? I know that there have been other mayors and or councillors that have sat on FCM committees and boards in the past. Does that have to come out of her training budget? Because that
Funding never has to come from
a particular line item?
A specific line item. There is the possibility of putting an FCM line item within our council budget for travel. You will recall that typically we send 3 people on a typical FCM, and then when it's in the Atlantic provinces, we try to get all of council there. Mm-hmm. So up to this point, we've had one FCM over the time period. So it's a matter of what are we willing to budget for training of members of council and their input into higher committees.
If I might. So do we have a sense of how much it might cost over the ensuing year if a couple of those meetings are attended, or Do we have some sort of an idea what might be expended?
I will call on Councillor Huntley to tell us, because they're already scheduled, so we know where they're going to be. If you could just state where they are going to be, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One was in Alberta, which was just held. Excuse me. Two were one is in Ontario, one is in Ottawa, and the May 2023, it says to be announced, but I know their meeting's going to be in Toronto.
And that one will be with FCM.
At the FCM conference?
Yes.
Okay.
The May 2023. So the only potential cash outlay she would have would be travel to Ottawa.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. This is hard when you're dealing with a colleague and you know, you're thinking that maybe we shouldn't do this. It's not easy. No disrespect, I don't think that very many of our other surrounding municipalities send anybody to these FCM to sit on these boards and so on. We're a very small town compared to Toronto, Vancouver, Ottawa, all of the much bigger municipalities where that's what most of the stuff is directed toward. Most of the learnings are directed toward. And I think that's why we don't have people from the Valley attending FCM to sit on their boards and so on. You know, if Councillor Huntley is willing to do it by Zoom, certainly I have no problems with that whatsoever. But I do have a problem with us expending money to go to Toronto, to go to Ottawa, to attend an FCM meeting, and all the expenses that come out of that, especially in a time where belt tightening is what everybody is doing. And I just think it puts a bad look on it, and it's unnecessary. We can get all that information in other ways, and so, you know, Zoom, I'm perfectly help. You know, I say yes to Zoom, but to travel at the taxpayer's expense, I would have to say no.
Thank you. Councillor York.
Thank you. The minute that we're trying, or the motion that we're to approve is very specific. Are we allowed to add a Town of Kentville specific clause to it, that it would be Zoom based or hybrid based, that we, like, yes, we will fund it, but under the understanding that Councillor Huntley would be doing it online? Or is this the language from FCM to approve specifically?
This is the FCM language.
Okay.
And I think as you have pointed out, Councillor Huntley has specifically said if she does not have the money in her account, she will not be traveling. She will be doing it by Zoom. However, the May 2023 is a new budget, and that will be the FCM in Toronto. So that conference, we will typically send 3 people to that, and she might be one of those people.
Okay.
So they're although we do not make the intent for her to travel, there could be her traveling for that.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to, I'll say that the FCM is typically very much about big communities. But what we have seen in the last few years is what's happening in rural Canada. And from an FCM perspective, anything under 5,000 population is considered rural Canada. And so Councillor Huntley, with her interest in housing, is really an excellent candidate on these standing committees, and what she brings to the table with her curiosity and just putting our perspective on the table, because as our colleagues have pointed out, sometimes it feels like it's all the big cities that get to talk. but it would seem now that the real funding that's coming down is truly coming down to rural Canada, and so it's important to have a voice there. And I think what's also important here to note is that we do have numerous other colleagues in Nova Scotia who are actually on the FCM board, and they do keep us apprised of things, but this is just one more link into the conversation. Thank you. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Absolutely, it's, this is on, right?
Oh, no, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, there it goes.
There, thank you, Mayor Snow. Absolutely, it's never an easy situation when a colleague has a request of this. I just want to make this point clear that we are dealing with money that belongs to the taxpayers, and to take potentially, 10,000, 15,000, whatever, who knows? I look at it and I think, where could that money have been spent? So when we cry, and I know all of us here, we want to see sidewalks fixed and we want to see infrastructure repaired, and I look at that money and I think, should have been spent there. So really, if we can spend money on this, and I look at FCM, it's a little bit extravagant, to have that on your resume as a councillor, because I'm not taking away from it. I'm sure that there's value there, but I don't think we necessarily need it. So I'm a money person, and I look and I say, where could this money have been spent? So when I see these trips come up, and it was even before the previous council, years ago, people were on these committees and the expenses do tally up, and I always say, put the money where you're gonna see it. So, and again, I mean, no disrespect at all. I just think that we've got to be a little better with our spending, and I think this is to go through with this is not really a good sign that we're showing to the citizens of Kentville. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. And keeping in mind, this is my second time speaking. So, I mean, certainly if it's gonna be done hybridly, I'm comfortable with that. And if, May 2023 is the FCM conference, which is in Toronto, and if Councillor Huntley was going to that anyway, I guess my ask would be as well that information is brought back, and that we take some great learnings from this. I have to ask what the committee is again. I apologize.
Councillor Huntley?
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor Chair. There is 3 committees. One is, rural committees. So anything that is rural-dominated topics, I get to sit on and contribute. Excuse me. The next one is conference planning. So being involved with the actual conference itself, and helping them set up, and that could even be participating in the conferences while there. And then the third one is women in government. So they will be, if you look at their mandate, and it talks about, it comes from making sure everybody has a fair voice, whether it's, from immigration to any woman at all, that the opportunity is there to be a participant.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor, did you have anything further?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor York, you've spoken twice on the matter. Do you have something new to add?
I'm just hoping to get clarification around the budget. I know we've been saying 3,000 not to exceed Councillor Huntley's budget. However, Councillor Zabian has said 10,000. I just want to make sure we're getting the right figure.
3,000 is what Councillor's budget is.
So it would not exceed the $3,000 already allotted as per our budget approved by council?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Zabian, you've also spoken twice. Do you have something new to add?
You just, through the chair, I didn't say our budget was 10,000. I said that the expenses could be 10,000, but I just, a little clarity around the motion. I guess I find the motion confusing because I know Councillor Huntley has said that she will go hybrid, but the motion, if it's approved, says that we are prepared to fund it somehow. So it's not really worded. I know it's for FCM.
It is for FCM.
Right.
However, our wording is, this is the budget you're allocated with. This is the budget you work within.
Okay, but where's where do we have that to fall back on? Because that kind of could, that's kind of a get in a jail card for monopoly sort of too, right? Like hypothetically, you could still, hypothetically, that motion when passed could still mean that in a year or two that the member who's on FCM could have their expenses paid for, regardless of what they're saying tonight, right?
CAO.
Thank you. So I think just for greater clarity, we've got two pieces. We've got a minute here that's going to go to FCM. But then second, understand that if any expenditures are being incurred, so if council's giving the CAO direction, you can't go past this number, then that's the number we follow. So one allows the councilor the ability to sign up and participate at FCM. So FCM has got what they need. But then on an operational side of this, if the direction of council is not to go past a certain number, then that's the number that operationally I will manage the budget to.
So, sorry, Mayor Snow, to the CAO, do we need another motion then?
No,
Okay.
we have a budget.
Okay.
Councillor Maxwell.
Just a clarification, so we have $3,000 budgets, but let's say Councillor Huntley goes over 3,000. They're not gonna come and take it out of my budget if I haven't used up my 3,000. That's not going to happen, is it?
CAO.
So it's essentially from a perspective of taking from one to another isn't how it would work. So essentially, you're given a budget up to an amount. If for some reason you want to exceed that amount, then as a councillor, you would come back to council and ask for permission to go do that. So it's essentially, for lack of a better word, at that moment in time, council would then give direction on, are they expanding the budget or is the money being reallocated? But that's a council decision. It's not something that would happen as a course of business, that your number would be shrunk and another number would be increased. That's not how it would work.
Is there anything further on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that the town of Kentville Council support Councillor Paula Huntley's application to sit on FCM standing committees and attend committee meetings and forums, and if selected, that the town of Kentville is prepared to incur the cost of attending meetings of FCM Board of Directors. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you. All right, our next matter is transportation and maintenance update. CAO Troke, we have been provided with an update on the town of Kentville transportation and maintenance work. Did Director Bell wish to speak further on the matter?
Thank you, Mayor Snow. So I think it would benefit us all if we had Director Bell speak to this. This is some conversation that came out of CAC with regards to sidewalks in the streets, and a conversation with staff, and then Director Bell taking that information, and we have a note that's been circulated, but I think if Director Bell could speak, it would probably help us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Good evening, Council. You have the note included in the package, and I certainly won't read the entire note, but I do want to just give a little bit of the background on what has happened to date. Of course, the winter of 2021-22 was certainly a particularly hard year on our streets, and we've exceeded our budgeted $100,000 asphalt patching budget. We're roughly at $109,000 already this year, and the contractor has basically stopped the patching on, we have the main arteries patched, paved, but there's certainly still some side roads that could be patched. Otherwise, we'll be into Public Works doing it with cold patch, which isn't the most effective way. It's usually just used during the cold months when we can't get hot mix asphalt. This year's also did a number on sidewalks that, made them, the winter was bad as well, and damaged those to the state that they're in. Some of them are already obviously been earmarked for repair. This year's capital investment program will see the replacement of failing sidewalk and curb sections in front of the Ultramar on Park Street, West Main Street from the Harvest Moon crossing to around the corner to where the concrete sidewalk ends, sort of. I still think of it as a traveler's club, but I think we all know where that section is of asphalt sidewalk as you come into the downtown. That's going to be replaced. That was all tendered this year, along with a section of Headliner's studio sidewalk that is badly broken up. Those are all tendered along with the AT connector to obtain better pricing just through the larger project and economies of scale. So the next two construction seasons will see much of the downtown sidewalks, Webster, Aberdeen, Cornwallis, and parts of Main Street replaced as part of the AT project at 26 2/3 dollars as part of the large $3.67 million green infrastructure project. So I don't, certainly I would recommend that we delay any of that unless it's a maintenance issue, an issue, a certain area. We've tried a few times now to rent a sort of a sidewalk planing machine that can take off some of the higher edges. That's the most effective way for those uneven pieces where there's heave or settlement, mostly heave, and just doesn't go back down. That can become toe catchers. But those will be replaced in the next two seasons in the larger capital project. Repairing sidewalks, often involves cutting out the worst sections of asphalt and repaving them. We carry a fairly small budget as under operating for repairs. So, there are a couple of sidewalks, for instance, Canaan Avenue, sort of from Dale, or just south of Dale, all the way to Main Street, and a section of Klondike Street that are asphalt, and we still probably would go back with asphalt. It's the most effective on some of those lower volume streets to make them more accessible and safer. But due to the lateness of the season, it is questionable whether we can even get contractors interested. We do have two contractors now doing one doing the AT project through the capital and one doing our patch paving through operating. That I would approach each of them to get competitive pricing on those two sections of sidewalk. We were kind of delaying the replacement of the Klondike section of sidewalk, thinking that the County of Kings, through the regional sewer upgrades, were going to potentially run the large force main down that sidewalk of Klondike as it gets replaced, but it's been deferred at least a year, perhaps two or more, to focus on potentially the more important upgrades to the plant instead of the force main that runs from RG5 through to Eves Hollow. So we didn't want to replace that and seen it tore up again the same season. But since that's on hold indefinitely, that's one area that certainly could be upgraded. And again, our patch paving, if there's still season, it has to be warm enough and dry enough to do patch paving, and we are into almost October. So I think the potential is there to do some more work if council would like me to speak to the two contractors and try to attain pricing. We're looking at, I just threw some numbers on there. These are my estimates, not quotes from contractors, but Canaan Avenue and miscellaneous side roads, we could easily spend $50,000 in patch paving, and 115 I had budgeted as potential replacements of Canaan Avenue bottom section of sidewalk to Main Street and the Klondike sidewalk. So that's sort of the background on what I've come up with from the request to investigate those things. Hopefully I've captured what the request was from last CAC meeting, and I'll leave that to talk about before we get into a recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Director Bell. So we do have the recommendation to do this work, and I am going to request that council consider it in two motions. That way, it will enable immediate action on both matters if it works out the way we expect. So the first motion would be with regards to the asphalt patch paving, in that council approve an additional 50,000 of asphalt patch paving of side street funding to the current approved 2022-2023 budget using reserve funding. If someone could move that, please.
So moved.
Deputy Mayor, thank you. And a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor York. It has been moved and seconded that council approve an additional 50,000 of asphalt paving of side streets funding to the current approved 2022-2023 budget using reserve funding. Is there any discussion or questions for the director? And you may speak to the director directly. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So I read this a few times, and it didn't quite, it didn't resonate with me the first few times, and it still doesn't. So I'm gonna ask the question. So you're saying budget implications, there aren't the funds for it now because you have a small residual there, which is $5,000, right?
That's a maintenance budget.
Okay, so
Correct.
that's maintenance, so that's fine, I'm okay with that. But then you're proposing, on the other hand, that we take 165,000 from reserve, give or take. So, I guess, what reserves would those come from? And what would that do to our financial condition indicators? And do we have to take it from a reserve? Could we borrow, like, could we do a temporary borrowing resolution and borrow some of the funds or a portion thereof so we don't deplete the surplus, or maybe there's not a surplus, or where's that coming from?
CAO.
Thank you.
A
So,
lot of questions,
I guess there's two ways to approach it. One, you can approve this.
Right.
And basically from the premises that at the end of the year, if we budgeted at zero,
Okay,
then you take it from a reserve.
okay,
If you, between now and the end of the year, you run a bigger surplus, then we're just going to deplete that surplus. So that's kind of your way of, at this moment in time, it's about triggering the ability of the director to do the work.
okay,
If we needed to borrow that money, certainly you're absolutely right. That's an option to consider. And as you, see in past years, it's been fairly typical where the town would run a surplus. So basically the direction would be, at this moment, we're saying reserve because then it guarantees that it's going to get paid.
okay,
We'll do very little to our indicators. 165,000
okay.
would not do much. We put over 400,000 essentially into reserves last year.
Okay.
So I would say at this moment in time, we use the term reserve, but then should we have the ability to increase, if the town surplus comes in higher, then we would just take it against that essential bottom line of the budget.
Now I feel comfortable.
And through the chair, the patch paving would be an operational reserve, as the CAO Troke said, from surplus, assuming there is one. The sidewalk, I would think, would become from a capital reserve and as a capital investment, but an unbudgeted one, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Director Bell. Any of the patching that is proposed for this, is it anything, I don't want to get into a Condon Avenue thing where we're patching or doing something that next year is going to be torn up anyways, and it's just going to be a waste of money.
No.
Thank you.
For sure, and through the chair, Canaan Avenue is certainly a place, mostly the south end of Canaan. It was lightly patch paved, we'll say, last construction season in '21, but it's that south end to the town line that is in the worst condition, and it is a pretty busy street. There's not a lot of infrastructure on that road, so I'm not saying that it won't be dug up in the future, because there's already been some talks from the last 15 or so homes in town that they don't have town sewer. So there's been a discussion, should we extend sewer out to them, or pressure sewer or something along that way. But most of that could go, if that's an uncurbed street, could go in the shoulder of the road. The water main's already there and it's new, so not a lot of potential upgrades on that street. The rest of it would be just strictly patch. We're not talking about spreader paving, we're talking about getting into some of the older subdivisions and doing some patching that didn't get done this year, again, if there's still the weather and the time, because the focus to spend that first 109,000 was on Main Street, Cornwallis Street, Prospect Avenue, or those sorts of roads, Park Street. that were the higher volume streets and in the worst condition from the winter work.
Your worship, if I could.
Certainly.
And just to follow up on that, and a lot of people don't know this, but when they patched out Colebrook Way and they patch Main Street and they patch Cornwallis and they patch Chester Avenue, those, correct me if I'm wrong, are provincial. We
pay
pay to
it.
maintain them. They are provincial, and I'm asking you because, and you, is there any way when we do patch those streets, because I know we've got a much higher standard than the province does, to send a bill to the province to say, you're not maintaining them, but it's your property. Here's at least a portion of the bill that we pay every year?
So if
I think I know the answer.
If I could take that one first, CAO, just to get us in a little hot water here. So there is a roads committee. They have been talking about exactly this. The first study that was done was in 2011 and then subsequent 2014. And at that time, the town of Kentville had 33.7 miles or kilometers of streets. 15.7 of those are actually considered provincial highways and trunks. So therefore, the province owes us half funding. But I'm not going to spit in their eye yet because they have given us money on the AT thing. So this is another one of those battles, and this is one of those battles that I'm going to say that as members of council in Nova Scotia, that we can fight through the NSFM and changes like that, because the recommendations from the road committee is that these become shared within towns, because we do pay 100%, where the county only pays for their J-class roads. So yes. CAO, did you want to add something to smooth out my rough edges on that one?
So the only piece I would suggest is that, so first, I would never suggest we incur an expense and send it to anybody and hope that they'll pay it for us. But I appreciate the thought. But I think the other side of this, and the mayor did touch on it, there's quite a collective conversation around roads and maintenance of roads, but also the expansion of services. And so we have an application in before the province and the federal government for expansion opportunities. So there are certainly pluses and minuses, and from what we get, I think what we control and what's in our bailiwick to control, Director Bell comes before us and talks about that. And I guess the second part is that much of that work, you obviously look at what is the quality and what are you getting, and then particularly for big projects like McDonald, we would have people who would be, on a daily basis making sure that what we're paying for is what we're getting. And so there's all kinds of pluses and minuses to this conversation that I think we can appreciate. And these pieces here very specifically, the only other thing I do want to add is this is also contingent upon weather. And I know right now we are not experiencing really cold weather, but it's not that far away. And there was a time asphalt plants used to shut down on Halloween, like clockwork, right? And so we've been fortunate to be able to go past that. But you do need, and Director Bell can correct me if I'm off, but you're going to need +10 consistently, probably even higher than that, to make sure that that's going to work. So that's the other part, is that you need to make sure, even if you're going into procuring this at this point, that we get the weather to make sure that's going to happen.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, and thank you, Director Bell, for this detailed report. And I have been on all these sidewalks, and they definitely need some work.
There's others for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And, but this isn't what I was talking about when I was sending pictures to my colleagues around this horseshoe, and that I was bringing up at CAC. I was talking about what you call the foot catcher, or the toe catchers, and I'm going to expand that to say ankle breakers as well.
Councillor Maxwell, are you talking about patch paving, or are you talking about sidewalks? Because we're not on the sidewalk motion yet. We're still on patch paving?
Oh,
The
we're talking about
sidewalks.
streets?
We're talking, yes, the sidewalks are the next motion.
Okay, all right, sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any further discussion on patch paving of side streets? All right, are you ready for the question? The question is that council approve an additional 50,000 of asphalt patch paving of side street funding to the current approved 2022-2023 budget using reserve funding. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you. And our second motion is that council direct the CAO to instruct the Director of Engineering and Public Works to obtain pricing and proceed with replacement of sections of Canaan Avenue and Klondike Street sidewalks not to exceed $115,000, and further that funding is added to the current approved 2022-2023 budget using reserve funds. Someone could move that, please? Deputy Mayor, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Maxwell, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council direct the CAO to instruct the Director of Engineering and Public Works to obtain pricing and proceed with the replacement of sections of Canaan Avenue and Klondike Street sidewalks not to exceed $115,000, and further that funding is added to the current approved 2022-2023 budget using reserve funding. Is there any discussion on this matter? Councillor Maxwell, you had the floor.
It's time for me to do it right. Okay, so everything that I said before, I agree. What I was referring to were places around town that you would call toe catchers, and I would call some of them ankle breakers. And I know that I've fallen in one of those out in front of Open Arms, and I believe maybe our solicitor did the same thing, and he was a little lot worse off aware than I was. I'm wondering, and I don't expect this to be big bucks, and I don't expect to replace the entire sidewalk. I know that on Webster, we have done some work, and one of those holes is filled up with gravel, and to level it off. And I'm wondering, can we fill that hole like in front of Open Arms with something so that people aren't falling into it? Can we fill the holes in front of the sidewalk?
Councillor Maxwell, I'm going to have to caution you again. That is not what we're voting on. That's a
Where do I do that?
at CAC, as
I
you've
already
already
did
done.
it. I already
Okay.
did it
Well,
there.
then it has already been noted by our staff, and
But
what they've come back to us is.
This is the report that we got back. I asked for a CAO to do a report, and this is, why those things weren't fixed, and this is the report that we get. And so it does not address what I brought to CAC.
Okay, but we're not we are voting on this matter of funding for Canaan Avenue and Klondike. And so you will have to bring it back to CAC or an email to the CAO requesting further on the rest of your request.
But I've already done that once. I've already brought it to CAC. This is
Okay.
totally different than what I brought to CAC. So I'm trying to clarify.
What you're saying must be germane to the motion that's on the table.
Well, that's a
And the
good way to
motion
get
that's-
around it. Okay.
No,
Fine.
I'm not trying to get around it. This is Robert's rules. This is not my rule.
It does not, but it does not address what I asked at CAC. So maybe CAO could address what I asked at CAC.
I'd be happy to make a comment. I guess, first of all, the first part of this report, Director Bell outlines the work that's already been procured. So a number of your questions that you asked at CAC were very specific to certain locations that have already been tendered. So those items are part of the current year AT plan. And so those are all part of a tender that's already been out and awarded and should be happening within the next 30 days. The second item, and we went and had a conversation with staff around some of those pieces that, needed attention. Mm-hmm. And so what you see coming back here are yes, these are some larger items in a way, But also what you're seeing is that there is an extensive plan that's already been approved by council, essentially that's going to encompass the majority of the downtown. So I think what you've seen here is there's really three pieces. There's what's already been awarded this year, what's going to be happening over the next 2 years, plus a proposal here to do something that staff see as a concern. I think your points noted about the toe catchers, certainly that's an item that we would see as we've got some pieces if we're going to be doing any kind of patching or any kind of hole filling, that these are items that we would look at trying to do through that. But for example, the older bricks in downtown, that's all part of a larger plan that will be happening in year 2 and 3. So I think, I guess what I'm trying to say, and maybe I'm not doing a very good job of it, I think the bigger pieces you had concerns around have been addressed in a tender that's been awarded. Some of the smaller things we recognize, and we're going to do our best to try and handle those. And then those pieces long-term are going to be corrected through kind of year 2 and 3 of the AT plan.
Okay, but through the chair to CAO, that's great. I just don't want to go 2 years with these big toe catchers or ankle breakers sitting, not looked after. That's what I don't want to see happen, and we've got some really bad spots. And so I'm just looking for them to get filled up.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Your Worship. Director Bell, one question since we're on sidewalks. I've seen the sander that they use to, and I know that Valley Power used to have it in a few other places. Is there, we've got enough sidewalk, cement sidewalk, would it warrant purchasing one?
Thank you, through the chair. We did try to rent one, they couldn't deliver with the, I hate to sound like a broken record, but with the way things are, they couldn't even supply. They always had a planer slash chipper cobbler that we have used in the past. I don't think they're a large ticket item. They're a few $1,000s. They're not tens of thousands, but they're a few $1,000s. It may be beneficial to investigate the purchase of one. Could also take 6 months to get one, but it's something we can price and look at for the probably next fiscal now.
Okay. And the second thing is being on Canaan and Klondike. Both of those streets are very narrow, and this is coming from a guy that drives a truck with a trailer in the back. Is there any plan on taking the sidewalks back a little bit and making, especially Klondike, because I know we do work down Klondike, and that number one, where the AT trail crosses is bad because there's brush right up to the edge, almost on either side, but it's really bad because there's brush right up to the edge of the sidewalk, or sorry, the crosswalk that goes directly to the marsh, which is separate about 50 feet beyond, if you're driving down Klondike, beyond the AT connection.
Right, so yes, Leverett has concrete sidewalk that kind of ends at the corner by the crosswalk, and then it's probably only a 4-foot asphalt sidewalk that's in need of repair. It could even, we're going to investigate taking out some sections and potentially even recapping and widening it to make the best use of the time and money in this shortened season. But it goes all the way. It is sort of a dead end sidewalk that goes down to the end of Klondike and doesn't turn to go down Chestnut.
And there's that grassy area between the curb and
There
the
is
sidewalk.
a bit of a median. Yeah.
That is one less thing for either the homeowners or Parks and Rec to have to maintain.
Right.
That would make it a little wider.
Quite a bit. Yep.
Thank you.
Noted.
Is there anything further on the sidewalks of Klondike and Canaan Avenue?
If I might, Your Worship?
Certainly.
I think this is relevant to council's discussion. And I saved this for sidewalks because I don't know whether it was applicable to the streets or not. But obviously, budget restrictions are an important part of the evaluation when it comes to situations in town that may be a safety hazard. But the law is an important component of this as well. And the courts have spoken very clearly in the last, I've lost track of time over the pandemic, but certainly in the last 2 years, and it might have been in the last year, about municipal units' responsibility. And there was a case that some of you may have heard about a snowbank. And it is really important for council to have these discussions like you're having tonight, because it falls to council to ultimately make the policy decision around when you repair and when you don't repair. And it falls to staff to come to you and say, you didn't give me a big enough budget to fix everything that needed to be fixed from a safety perspective. And then you get to make the decision whether to give staff more money. The court has said the more public engagement that you have around those discussions, the safer you are from a liability perspective. So just, if I might, to respond to the comment about the point in front of open arms, I don't want people in the public to think that I'm accident prone. This was some years ago. But since a bench went in and people congregate, there's less room to get through there, and there's a tree that often doesn't have enough material around it. And I know staff are aware of that, and it gets filled. But with rain, of course, things deteriorate. So I know staff have a process of responding to complaints when they get them, so that they can investigate those matters and deal with them. But ultimately, they have to have funding from you. So on the issue of sidewalks, it falls to you folks, when you know of dangerous conditions and it's a budget issue, to make a decision about whether you can afford to fix it or whether you can afford not to fix it. And the second part's where the legal side comes in. So that's why I wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief. Director Bell, the sidewalks, are they cement or pavement?
What we're proposing now, given the time of year, would be asphalt replacement of Canaan and Klondike, not concrete.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I would like to believe, and perhaps the CAO can confirm it, that if there are any dangerous spots around town, that they will be attended to. Through the chair.
CAO, please.
Thank you. So yes, we have a process where when anything is identified or if staff see things, and I think the piece that we're talking about here tonight is, a hole will get filled or whatnot. This is talking about a slightly more permanent way of filling some of these things, or if there's a need for a entire piece to be replaced, then we're looking at that as kind of where we're going tonight.
All right, if there's nothing further, are you ready for the question? I should get the question. The question is, Council direct the CAO to instruct the Director of Engineering and Public Works to obtain pricing and proceed with the replacement of sections of Canaan Avenue and Klondike Street sidewalks not to exceed $115,000. And further, that funding is added to the current approved 2022-2023 budget using reserve funding. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to title project. CAO, you have an update for council on this matter with regards to funding and FCM money. Thank you very much, Director Bell. We appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you. So this was just a follow-up from a question at CAC with regards to if FCM funding was not received, would that mean that any of the town's investors or in this case specifically, if Kentville was an investor, would those funds be lost? And I had an opportunity to confirm from the town of Annapolis, the CAO, that collecting the commitment from the partners advances the application, but no money is spent until FCM commitment is received. So meaning if there's no FCM funding, none of the investments from the partners would be spent. So the investment that would be needed if council approved this request for year one would be $11,150. None of that money would be spent unless the FCM commitment was received. So should FCM not approve it, then essentially the investment remains with the town.
Thank you, CAO. So based on that information, and the recommendation that we had is that council approve participation in the Town of Annapolis Royal Tidal Power Project, and further approve allocation of the necessary funding to the project of $22,300 over 2 years, and approve the first year funding of $11,150 outside the current approved 2022-2023 budget. If someone could move that, please. Thank you, Councillor Gerard. Deputy Mayor, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve participation in the Town of Annapolis Royal Tidal Power Project, and further approve allocation of the necessary funding to the project of $22,300 over 2 years, and approve the first year funding of $11,150 outside the current approved 2022-2023 budget. Is there any discussion on this matter? Deputy Mayor.
It's just sort of more of a comment. And I look at this as really a small amount of funds to take part in a leading edge project. I think it's really exciting that Kenfield can be a part of this, and certainly in line with our strategic plan and reduction of carbon footprint, not prints. So I'm all for it. I'm really happy that we have this opportunity. So thank you to the CAO for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Is there anything further? Are you ready for the question? The question is, council approve participation in the Town of Annapolis Royal Tidal Power Project, and further approve allocation of the necessary funding to the project of $22,300 over the next 2 years, and approve the first year funding of $11,150 outside the current approved 2022-2023 budget. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, our next matter is with the street naming and renaming task team update. CAO Trope, back to you on this one.
Thank you very much, Mayor Snow. And when in July, at a meeting of Council Advisory Committee, there was some questions with regards to when proposals would be brought forward for a street renaming, just from a process perspective. There was also some discussion around what different communities do and so on. So this went back to the Street Renaming Committee, and basically the Street Renaming Committee has confirmed that their thoughts around this was that first, anything that would come forward to the committee obviously goes through due diligence and looking at the validity of the request, and basically from a perspective of if there is a name that is inappropriate or a term that is considered racist, that the policies and practices that have been put forward here by the committee would give an opportunity for any group, regardless, to come forward with a concern. And so the committee, after kind of looking at a couple of different options, has unanimously decided to come back to council with the support of their original report to CAC with regards to the municipal asset naming and renaming policy. And so kind of in a synopsis, what that would be is that any individual or individuals could come forward if they had concerns around the name of a street, that it would come to the committee and there would be a kind of a review of the origin of the street and what it meant. And then based on that, they would be able to make a recommendation to council, who ultimately have a decision on the renaming of a street, but basically do the due diligence, which would give the opportunity for council to have a deeper understanding on the name, where it came from, why a group may find that to be offensive or racist. And then obviously this asset policy also was looking at having kind of a bank of names, if you will, that would be available for council's consideration in order to move forward. So this was from the chair of the committee, Laurel Taylor, who wanted to confirm for council that they would like to put forward to council their original proposal for how they would go about assessing renaming of a street.
Excellent. Thank you very much, CAO. So that gives us a motion that council approve the Town of Kentville Municipal Asset Naming and Renaming Policy. If someone can move that, please. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Second from Councillor Maxwell. I realize that both of you are on the Accessibility Committee, so thank you for your time on that, and thank you for moving and seconding this motion. So it has been moved and seconded that council approve the Town of Kentville Municipal Asset Naming and Renaming Policy. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to approve the Town of Kentville Municipal Asset Naming and Renaming Policy.
I have a potential legal concern around this. It's not on the agenda for adoption of a policy, and a policy adoption requires advance notice to council. So
CEO?
that may have been the intent, but that's not how it appears on the agenda.
Okay, so your concern here, just for clarity,
It's
is
a
how it's
policy.
presented on the agenda should have a formal that we're adopting this policy. It was brought forward before with follow-up, so we've extended it. You're saying from an agenda perspective, it should be more clear on the agenda.
Was it tabled to tonight?
It wasn't tabled tonight, but it was tabled
No,
for further.
so I believe that the Municipal Government Act requires notice of the adoption of the policy. You don't have two readings, but you have to have advance notice of the adoption of the policy, and so the policy needs to be included in the agenda package and appear on the agenda in that fashion for the notice to be effective.
So if I could, basically, council has at this moment moved forward on this. We could add it to the agenda package for October, at which point in time then council would have the full policy in front of them for an additional review.
Thank you, Solicitor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and it's, I always make notes before my meeting, and I had written down municipal asset naming and renaming policy. When does that policy come back? So I was thinking, I kind of was thinking along the same thing, but I couldn't remember if we tabled it or if we approved the policy with an amendment to come. I couldn't remember.
No, we did not approve the policy. We sent it back for review
Right.
to the
That's
committee.
what it was. Yeah, right.
With recommendations, and then they came back to us. So my regrets to the street naming subcommittee, ad hoc committee of the. It's a paperwork screw up, and we'll get this fixed, and we'll have it on the agenda for November the 1st, and move on from there. All right, so we are now at the recommendations and reports. We're just an hour and a half in. Do we need to break for biological concerns? Yes? Okay, 5-minute break for biologicals. Thank you. Thank you, welcome back. And we're moving on to our recommendations and reports. The recommendations arising from the CAC meeting on September 12th will be read and moved by Councillor Gerard. Councillor Gerard, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Worship. At the September 12th, 2022 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, Director Deb Kroll submitted the temporary boring solution from the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding the town's sanitary sewer area service 2022-2023 capital program in the amount of $230,000. CAC recommends that council authorize the temporary borrowing resolution of sanitary sewer of the McDonald subdivision in the amount of $230,000. And further, that this resolution be forwarded to the September 26th, 2022 meeting of council for approval. And further, upon approval, that this resolution be sent to the Minister of Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing for provincial authorization. I so move.
Thank you. If I could have a seconder to that? Deputy Mayor, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the temporary borrowing resolution TBR 22/23-2 in the amount of $230,000 for sanitary sewer at McDonald subdivision, and further, upon approval of that this resolution be sent to the Minister of Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing for provincial authorization. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to approve the temporary borrowing resolution TBR 22/23-2 in the amount of $230,000 for sanitary sewer on the McDonald subdivision, and further, upon approval, that this resolution be sent to the Minister of Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing for provincial authorization. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much.
At the September 12th, 2022 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, CAO Troke presented the municipal boundary report, which indicated that residents are satisfied with the current size of council. Council Advisory Committee recommends that council recommend to the Utility and Review Board maintaining the size of council at 7 elected officials. I so move.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor York, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council recommends to the Utility and Review Board to maintain the current size of council at 7 elected officials. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to recommend to the Utility and Review Board to maintain the current size of council at 7 elected officials. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and that motion is carried. Thank you.
At the September 12th, 2022 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, CAO Troke presented the municipal boundary report, which indicated that residents are satisfied with the existing number of electoral districts. Council Advisory Committee recommends that council recommend to the Utility and Review Board maintaining the current electoral system of 1 electoral district and use the at-large voting system. I so move.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It has been moved and seconded that council recommend to the Utility and Review Board to maintain the current electoral system of 1 electoral district and use the at-large voting system. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that council recommend to the Utility and Review Board to maintain the current electoral system of 1 electoral district and use the at-large voting system. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and that motion is carried.
At the September 12th, 2022 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, CAO Troke described the selection process for council to review and approve applications to the Grants to Community program. Prior to this meeting, council voted on support for each application and made a motion to support the results of that survey at this meeting. Council Advisory Committee recommends that council approve the distribution of community grants as outlined in the attached report, and further that the details of the distribution be publicly shared as per policy. I so move.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the distribution of community grants as outlined in the attached report, and further, that the details of the distribution be publicly shared as per policy. Is there any discussion on this matter? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I brought this up at CAC as well. I would, as a counselor, would like to have input on each of the grants, and I think having a meeting where we review the grants as a group and the way that we've always done it, and then determine our 26,000 distribution from that. I prefer that method much better than us each making individual silo amounts and then having it divided up by this method. I think that our groups around town that ask for grants deserve better attention than that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Maxwell. And did you click on again?
No.
Okay. I agree wholeheartely with what you've said, and I will be bringing something within the next couple of meetings with regards to expanding our meetings so that we actually have some scheduled meetings, because as you well know, trying to get 7 people together at budget time, and when we're doing capital budgets, operational budgets, grants, and then you consider the number of surveys that we've had out of DMA, and they're looking for input from the whole gang of us. You know, it's pretty hard to pull us all together. So perhaps there is a requirement for other meetings that are scheduled into our schedules that we can plan around. And so I just put that out there, and thank you for your comments. Is there anything further on our community grants? Are you ready for the question? The question is that council approve the distribution of the community grants as outlined in the attached report, and further that the details of the distribution be publicly shared as per policy. And the voting is now open. And voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you.
At the September 12th, 2022 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, Deputy Mayor Kate Savage brought forward the Investment Advisory Committee recommendation to extend the services of TD Wealth Investment Advisor and asked Council to support this extension. Council Advisory Committee recommends that Council approve a 1-year extension of services by TD Wealth Investment Advisors for the Investment Advisory Committee until August of 2023. I so move.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It has been moved and seconded that council approve a 1-year extension of the services by TD Wealth Investment Advisors for the Investment Advisory Committee until August of 2023. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that council approve a 1-year extension of services by TD Wealth Investment Advisors for the Investment Advisory Committee until August of 2023. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Gerard. And we move on now to our councillor reports, and the reports will be presented and are part of the record of the meeting. Councillor Gerard.
Your Worship, I have not had a meeting. My joint fire services, which is the only one coming up, is next week, and I will have a report next month. Sorry.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was a couple of meetings. One was King's Transit. The BDO gave us a review of their financials, and of course, then they handed over the meeting. They went into the IMSA pilot project for the next 2 years. So that was our last meeting for a bit. Into the Kentville event, there was 2 that I attended. One was the Kentville Canada Cup. I hung out as a volunteer for the Saturday. And I also attended the Emancipation Civic Ceremony at Gibson Woods, and it was wonderful. There's a list of all the other meetings there, and I think the one that stands out to me that I just want to talk a little bit about was we had a housing information session event, excuse me, at Main Street Station. Municipal Affairs and Housing Minister was there. I've attached a report, but the goal of it was to haul in many people who are totally interested to find out what is going on with housing around, and not just as listeners, but as participants. So we had 5, 6 guest speakers. They all showed, some presentations or spoke about what they were doing, and excuse me, and their presentations were going to come to Jennifer, and we're going to be able to get those out to people when they're all in. So when you get a chance and you receive them, please have a read, because it was very interesting. And that is my report. At the end, I just put in, I took an energy modeling for municipal staff on, it was with FCM, and it was a really good course, and that was free for anybody to take, and you do it in sections, so it was good. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Councillor Maxwell.
Oh, I just had a question for Councillor Huntley. Could I ask a
Through
question?
chair, yes.
Through the chair. Councillor Huntley, I'm just wondering, when I look through your meetings there, I'm just wondering what this circular economy webinar was about, and if there's anything that we can take away from that information for the town of Kentville.
It was, sorry, thank you. It was an awesome webinar, actually, and anybody can go on it. They always, after they do it, they post it to, whether it's YouTube or you can just Google. But what they want to talk about is, most people who are now talking about climate change is such a large topic, but there's still a cost involved in climate change, as we all know. What we want people to be able to talk about is, as a circular economy, what about the costs now? Who's bearing the cost of all the improvements and the wonderful things that we want to bring in, as we call it, green or whatever it is? So just as one example, if you picture a car, it's an EV car, and they wanted to change out a battery, and you pulled up to this, it's like Japan, and they have 92 batteries in one section. You pull out one, you put in whatever. So who's paying for this? And when the battery runs its life cycle, which I can't pretend to know what that is, let's say it's 8 years, where does that battery go? And if someone says we do it at a drop zone, who's paying the cost of getting rid of that?
Right.
So what they really want is the companies who are making these things, they better start looking at owning some of that cost, so it's taking the heat off the municipalities.
Okay. All right. And I think when you put down September 21st, Kentville Historical Meeting, isn't that Kings County?
Yes.
Yes, okay, all right, thank you. Okay, my report. Okay. All right. Okay, so July the 29th, I attended the Police Commission. The chief recommended a strategic planning session to deal with speeding, crosswalk safety, school bus safety, and so on, and we're going to put that on the agenda for the next meeting, so I had asked to have that put on the agenda. We discussed security in Town Hall, and this will be taken up with the CAO. Our MLA, along with the RCMP, mental health and addictions, are working on strategies to deal with mental health issues, which is one of the biggest things that our police force is dealing with on a daily basis. We reviewed a letter from, and that was the Police Commission. Then the Inclusion and Accessibility Committee met on September 9th, and we reviewed a letter from the Nova Scotia Department of Infrastructure and Renewal on the accessibility of the bridge. They had sent us a letter back. We noted that they didn't meet their minimum width of the sidewalk. We actually had a person that went out and measured it, and they didn't meet the minimum there. As a group, we're going to respond to their letter and this time ask what their suggestions would be on how to make the sidewalk more accessible, because it is too narrow and it is not an accessible sidewalk. The committee also sent a request from council for 50% plus one support for street naming, and we've gone through this, and I just put down for the public what the issues were, and we sent it back and said no. We voted on a new chair and vice chair, with Laurel Taylor taking the chair and Gerald McPherson as doing the vice chair position. We reviewed the town hall built environment, and when complete, the process will move to other town-owned buildings. We are represented in a group, including the provincial body and other municipalities, to evaluate the cultural shift and the changes we make to become more inclusive and to change the narrative. So at the end of that process that's going on with that larger group, then we will, as a town, get an evaluation process will be developed so that we can evaluate our progress and how our progress is going. We are working with KBC to look at the barriers that exist for businesses to make changes to become more accessible and inclusive, and we reviewed some of those. And the goal is then to help find ways to solve those barriers. So we've heard from some of the businesses and some of the problems that they face in becoming more accessible, and then our group will try to find ways to solve some of those if we can. We will see some of the aspects of the multi-use trail beginning in the next couple of weeks. So those are my committee meetings. The opening of the Mural Fest I attended back in July. It was great participation for the opening. We've seen some fantastic murals go up in town, and I'd like to just send out a big thanks to all the artists and the festival organizers, because of course that was very well done. I attended the Kentville Maryland Swim Meet on July 30th. Lots of participation. Great to see the high standard of organization Kentville has always been known for, continuing on. Police, I attended the police barbecue. There was an event held by the chief and the commission, and to bring present and past members of the Kentville Police Service together to make those retirees still feel part of the family. And so that was a really nice idea and well attended. August 20th, I dropped over to the Kings County Museum for the art exhibit Brush with Nature. You might have seen some artists out around town on that day, painting different works, and then those are all displayed at the museum, and there's a competition and there's prizes given out and things like that. So some very nice works actually done. On August 25th, I attended the concert in the park. I think it was the last one of the series. The Melbournes were playing. Well attended, great group for the end of the season, and just another good concert series that took place at Oak Dean Park. And that's my report.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
I just
you have a
actually have a question for Councillor Maxwell through the chair. Security at Town Hall, can you elaborate on that? Or if you can't, I understand, but that one stuck out.
There are some issues with accessibility, how easily we are accessible at certain times. And so although we've had a lot of work done, there's just a few things that could be brushed up on. So we just had a discussion about that.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, my report. So September the 9th was Kenfield Inclusion Accessibility Advisory Committee, which I attended, but Councillor Maxwell has covered that all off, so I won't repeat that. September the 15th was Regional Sewer Committee. We had regular meeting updates, and the majority of the meeting was actually devoted to discussions around the budget amendments as they pertain to the county regional treatment plant. the desludging and aeration and equipment install. So further discussions related to the, to canceling, as Director Bell talked about tonight, the force main replacement, which is going to be delayed for probably about 2 more years. So more numbers to come, probably at the next council meeting or the next one after that. The technical committee is still deliberating on some of those items. September the 13th was Investment Advisory Committee, where the value of our portfolio is just north of 13 million. We have a negative 4% year-to-date return, which is actually quite good when it's against the benchmark. There's no rebalancing required at this point. We're not trending too much into equities, slow and steady right now, and keeping with fixed income as well. And we're on track for the income needed to finish out 2023. September 15th was KBC. And what I did there is I posted the meeting minutes from Thursday, September the 15th. But suffice it to say, there's a lot of minutes there, and there's a lot going on with that committee. I mean, it is just going great guns. The events committee report is always quite robust. The Under the Gazebo is underway. The Pumpkin Walk is back on October the 20th. Harvest Festival starts October the 1st. Holidays starts November the 18th. They're rebuilding the Multicultural Festival Planning Committee, and so on and so on. So the minutes are all there for your perusal. And it's pretty exciting what continues to happen with them. And they have a new vice chair, a new chair and a new vice chair. August the 19th, I attended a funeral for Joan Ann Marie Tracy. On behalf of Mayor Snow, Ms. Tracy served on a number of Town of Kentville committees. August the 15th, I met with the CEO Troke and Mitch Bryson, re the development in McDougall Heights. September the 9th was a meeting with CAO Troke and Mayor Snow to prepare for CAC earlier this month. And September 14th, a meeting with members of the Police Commission, insight on terms of reference for the such committee and skills required to sit on that committee. September 15th, as Councillor Huntley referred to, the housing in the Annapolis Valley, a common understanding to solve the crisis. And Councillor Huntley, kudos to you. I know that you organized this event in consultation with Minister Lohr, and great speakers and great information. So thank you to you. Well done. And I believe that's everything in my committee report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell, did you have something?
Thank you. Yes, just a couple of short questions to the deputy mayor. One, I was wondering about the Lions Club facade program. The Lions Club building is owned by the Town of Kentville. I didn't think Town of Kentville buildings were open to facade, or are they?
That was actually discussed at the meeting, and I had a brief discussion with the CAO about that, and I don't know that they were aware of that the town of Kentville actually owns that building, so that's something that they have to go back and have some discussion with them about.
Okay. And secondly, I think it was at CAC, I brought up about the comfort station. I don't understand what release the money means. In that report, in the minutes there, I don't understand what it means that the group released the money.
So they're, so ACOA is prepared to give them an extension until March the 31st of 2023. And so just, there was discussion around moving forward with that project.
But the release the money just meant that it was extended, is that what?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and I was just wondering if all the building owners, if KBC had approached all the building owners around the square to make sure that there was, to make sure, or to check and see if there was space, and I did question it at CAC. I was hoping that maybe KBC did go and talk to everybody.
I would have to defer to the CAO on that, because I don't know that it was actually KBC that was lobbying for a spot, or I think it was more.
CEO, please.
Thank you.
For the chair.
I don't believe they were going to go and canvass all of the business owners. I understood that they were looking at a combination of, so there was spaces that were available, but there was also options with regards to either construct or even place within a town asset. So there was a series of decisions that needed to be made, and then they were all going to be discussed by KBC. So there's kind of more than one way that they were looking at it.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor York.
Thank you. A lot of the committees have already been discussed, so I'll leave those as they are. I attended a PTA meeting twice in 1 month. The first rather, September 13th. I like to call a pre-TA because we met as a group of executive before we met and invited the parents and the teachers, just so that we could get our heads around what the future years will look like. Because this year saw a big changeover in the executive, in that we had quite a few parents graduate out. And so it's a brand new executive team, and they wanted to get sort of their ducks in a row before moving forward. We did have our public session of the PTA on September 20th, where we had a lot of new families and a lot of new faces and welcomed them to the KCA family, which is really exciting. I also attended the Annapolis Valley Regional Library Committee meeting on September 15th. We learned a lot about what's been happening with usership post-pandemic as things start to return back to 2019 levels of normalcy. But the Kentville Library in particular has seen a massive increase over our 2019 stats. So 2019 being the last sort of quasi-normal year, we have an increase of about 125% in our usership here at the Kenfield Regional Library branch. So it's really exciting for them and for the staff there, and it speaks volumes to the community that's been built up around the library here in Kentville. We had scheduled a Board of Police Commissioners meeting. However, the 30th is a holiday. We had moved it to the 23rd, and Fiona impacted that. So we are going to be meeting in October. I, like Councillor Maxwell, attended the KPS barbecue, which was a wonderful event, and is something I think the chief has put a lot of emphasis in and a lot of work on to create just a fostering of community there through the department. I have an update that's not in my report, but is related to the joint council session on the regional rec facility. So we haven't yet received the final report, but we will be meeting as a joint council to go over all of that together with our community partners. So that will be the County of Kings and the Town of Wolfville. That will be an in-camera session where we receive that information and just have information to talk about. And perhaps the CAO can speak more to some of the finer details in terms of what exactly is going to be presented. Like I said, we don't have the actual report in hand yet as a committee, so or the final report rather, so there isn't much. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a lackluster update, but it is that we will be meeting as a joint council. Also, I just wanted to speak to the community and the neighborhood, or the neighborliness, I think, that I saw over the weekend with the town residents post-Hurricane Fiona. There was a lot of wonderful community cleanup efforts and people checking on their neighbors, and a lot of people coming together in a power outage. And I just wanted to thank the residents of Kentville for just stepping up and helping one another in a time of great stress for a lot of people. So congratulations, Kentville, you are nailing it. I think that's my update. I've done a few webinars, but nothing super exciting as the summer break kind of shut a lot of things down for a month. That's my report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Zabian, did you have something?
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a question, if I'm able to ask. I'm just wondering if you anticipate when that meeting might occur regarding the regional facility, if they've given you a ballpark time frame.
Yeah, it's on October the 3rd
Okay,
from 3 until 4:30.
perfect. Thank you.
Everyone should have
invite for
an
that.
invite?
Did I? Okay.
Yeah, should be in your calendar.
Okay.
It's a Teams meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. I didn't have any committee meetings to report, but a lot of dialogue in the last couple of weeks with citizens. Ongoing conversations about the sidewalks downtown, so I'm glad we had some discussion on that this evening, and hopefully we'll keep our eyes peeled to that. A lot of conversations with the citizens over the proposed chicken bylaw. A lot of concern there. Another issue that we haven't really been presented yet, but a lot of conversation with citizens in McDougall Heights over the proposal from Bryson, so we'll wait and see what comes of that. And for events, I attended the Mural Festival, which was great. I want to thank everybody involved in that, and of course the town staff. And the other event I attended was Kings County Museum, their art competition. a lot of great art there, and that was nice to see as well. Thank you.
Thank you. CEO Troke, could you provide council with an update on operational matters discussed 2 weeks ago at CAC?
Thank you very much, Mayor Snow. I appreciate it. First of all, I'd like to start off by a big thank you to our town of Kentville staff, Public Works, and all the folks working at the Activation Center during Fiona. All the training and tabletop stuff that everybody does really comes into play when an emergency happens. But also, and I'm sure folks here know, I mean, our crews, particularly in Public Works, were, very quickly out making sure that everything was being addressed. And I think the mayor had commented on, we got off fairly unscathed, but all the preparation, everything was in place. And there was a lot of briefings at the end of last week to help prepare for that. So for those who, Dan Stovall, who is our regional guy, and you'll probably get a million texts from him, but having someone like that as you lead up into an emergency is really important, and certainly did a great job in helping us. So just want to hats off to all of our team who went out and did what we know they will always do, but they did a great job. Occupational health and safety trainings going forward. So we have Mike Carter doing some work with us with regards to updating our plans. A number of things kind of are needed to be, we'll call it modernized, but then also from a process of doing the inspections of our buildings and whatnot, are a process that we're going through. So for example, this building, we did some analysis on some different pieces, and particularly in and around the basement areas. So that helps us then with regards to if there's any work that needs to happen in the future. IMSA, the pilot group, begin its work around Valley Waste and King's Transit. Also, there was some work that was being handed off with regards to the REN. And then regional economic development updates were ongoing this week. Nice to be hearing a lot of the things that folks are really pushing forward, particularly as we go into the fall season where folks are looking to have some activities in their towns. And then lastly, there's ongoing work with climate change, the IMSA, the animal control bylaw, and so on. They're all pieces that we're putting the nuts and bolts together to bring that forward. That's my quick update.
Excellent. Thank you very much, CAO. And you have my council report, and I think of note the Municipal Finance Corp, so MFC, has disbanded as its own board, and operations are now continuing under the Finance and Treasury Department. NSFM, so the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, mayors, wardens, and CAOs met on the 24th of August for a Zoom conference or a briefing on housing from the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And on the 6th of September, again, Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, NSFM, membership met, and this was a special meeting for the membership with regards to proposed bylaw changes. It did not go very well, and basically the bylaw changes were tabled. And so when we go to the conference at the beginning of November, we will be looking at this as part of our AGM meeting, and so be prepared for that meeting. There was a special meeting on the 15th of September of the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities with regards to housing supports for international healthcare workers, and it was targeted by area. So because we're in Kings County, I was part of it, and there was a presentation made by the province. So they're looking at something over 2,000 workers over the next 3 years coming in, and how are they going to house them, where are they going to house them, because of course they're coming in internationally, and they need to have housing before they get signed off on the dotted line and are permitted to come here. On the 21st of September, we had an IMSA, so an intermunicipal service agreement, interim board meeting, and the new intermunicipal service agreement board was established, and election of the officers and the committee members, and the initial briefing was from the executive director with regards to transit funding. So right now what this interim board will be looking at is both transit and Valley Waste. And so I will be bringing back updates to this meeting. We will be meeting the third Wednesday monthly, so I will be providing those meetings in a timely fashion to this council. And because we stood up the board, it was actually the last time the working group met. And so what we did was we reviewed version 2 of the Valley Regional Enterprise Network Intermunicipal Service Agreement, and that will go back to the Valley Wren for I guess implementation. On the 20th of August, I attended the Kings County Museum Plein Air Art Show and Sale, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the presenters of prizes. And it was pretty amazing. Some of the artwork, as I said when I made my presentations, it was 32 degrees outside, and I had goosebumps because they were just so amazing. And they were they were displayed in the museum, and they are for sale. So if you saw something that really interested you that you'd like to get your hands on, give them a call over at the museum, and they can help you out with that. On the 8th of September, community outreach work was a sit down and chat with the new commander of the 5th Canadian Division Support Group from Gagetown. And that is Colonel Mark, I just lost his last name, with regards to ongoing work with Aldershot. So just so you know, we have a very strong relationship with Aldershot, and it is ongoing. On the 10th of September, the Kentville Baptist Church did its annual Walk for Suicide Prevention. The last time we did the walk was in 2019, and we didn't walk because there was a storm. So we did a pretend walk in the basement of the Baptist church, but this year we were able to get out. And that evening, I attended the West Nova Scotia Regimental Association annual banquet dinner. And on the 15th of September, a housing information forum organized by Councillor Huntley. And we had the province there were developers there, not-for-profits, and other municipalities. So it was very interesting. And again, more community outreach on the 20th of September. Sat down and chat with the mayors of our region and Michelin North America President Andrew Much with regards to the way ahead for Michelin and what they're doing and employment opportunities for folks in the Annapolis Valley. I missed our last CAC meeting on the 12th of September as I was in Charlottetown for the asset management conference. It was an excellent conference. I was fortunate enough to be asked to present to the group on leadership through asset management, accounts, elected official perspective on asset management. And the keynote was the presentation from the Insurance Bureau of Canada about building resilience. And one of the things that I, especially after what we've just gone through, is make sure that your insurance covers you for the things that you think it covers you for, and not what it used to cover you for, because there are huge changes happening. The other thing as well is the cooperators. If you go to the cooperators website, they actually have an app where you can put your postal code, and then it drills down to your actual street address, and it will tell you what your risk of sewer flooding is and overland water flooding is. And they measure it in terms of insurance risk. So that's a good way of doing it. So the AIM conference, the other folks that we had there was folks, this climate power panel was absolutely incredible, and we had Ms. Cho from Ottawa, and she provided a lot of information. So when the slides come out, I will put them on our website so that you can have a look at them if you're interested. On the 21st of September, I attended Cody Institute out of St. Avex webinar on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So you'll hear a lot about SDGs and affordable housing in Nova Scotia. And they were talking about the origin of sustainable development goals and why they're important and how this relates to what is actually happening in Nova Scotia right now. So really great. And I also attended the REMO Basic Emergency Management course on Friday. So you can well imagine what kind of course that was, and the lead up to Fiona. So it was pretty incredible. And then on the 26th of August, I had a meeting with wing leadership at 14 Wing, again with community outreach, and that is my report. So thank you. We have no new business, and we have no correspondence. Sorry. Oh, okay, sorry.
Can I just
Councillor
ask
Xavier.
the CEO a quick question?
Sure.
CEO, I'm just wondering, late last week, I got a few comments from citizens that there was an advertisement in the Advertiser, that we were looking for a solicitor or proposals for us, and I'm just wondering, probably would have been nice if we were notified that was kind of coming up. First of all, that's my first question. And second of all, wouldn't there be an opportunity for us as a council to discuss the terms and what we're looking for? If, we've had this discussion before. I'm not sure who was involved in that conversation, but it would have been nice to kind of have a heads up. And I know there's a process involved and contracts and all that, but it would have been just nice to have a heads up that we were finally going to do this, and whatever comes of it comes of it. That would be my first thing. And then also kind of to discuss what we're looking for. We've got a great solicitor here. I'm not saying that we don't. I'm just saying what we're looking for in the future with whoever. Thank you.
CEO?
Thank you. So, and if I missed it, I apologize, but I believe the last time we were together, before our August break, we had said that we would be putting it out so that it would be in place. So if I missed that, but I'm almost confident that with that conversation was asked to me, and I said we would have it out over the summer months. Typical process, and I appreciate your comments, Councillor, is that what will happen is when it comes in, we do a review of what we received kind of with the senior leadership team here. We'd come to council, and then we'd be kind of exploring all of those pieces as part of the recommendation to council. So there's certainly an opportunity, obviously, for council to see what we get, but what we try to do is do our homework and put together a package for council before we come to you.
Sorry, so it's kind of, you're just going to kind of bring them forward if there's any proposals, and then we still have an opportunity to sit down and say, this is what we expect or don't expect, or, yeah.
CEO, please.
So it comes forward with a recommendation.
Okay.
But the intent would be is for us to try, because no two will necessarily respond the same way. So we kind of want to give that overview to council to understand that if there's certain areas that one individual or firm will go into, here's kind of the pros and cons of that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
I was looking over the weekend for our Committees of Council Policy G57, and I couldn't find it on our website for policy, so I'm just wondering, maybe somebody could double check me on that, but I couldn't find it there. Thank you.
All right, we're now at the public comment. Citizens are invited to make comment to council on any matter currently before the council. Please state your name and address, and you will be provided with 3 minutes. All right, we have no one coming forward. So council has a legal matters which must be conducted in closed session. We require a motion to go into a closed session to discuss the agenda items, and we will not be returning to Facebook Live for completion of the meeting or adjournment. So if the motion is to move into a closed session to discuss the agenda items. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Second. Councillor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council move into a closed session. The question is on adoption of the motion to move into a closed session. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried, and the time is 8:29. And if you need a biological break, we'll take 5 minutes and reconvene in the chamber.